China, which in recent years has been among the world's leading powers, is faced with a problem that is more characteristic of third world countries. Power shortages have recently become so severe that factories across China are closing, and the problem is especially acute in industrial centers in the northeast of the country as winter approaches. What exactly caused such a large-scale energy crisis that brought the Celestial Empire to the brink of an abyss? And can this have consequences for the rest of the world? Let's discuss it in this video on the Innovative Techs channel. Seasonal peak loads have happened in China even before. Due to a strong economic boom, energy demand in China has steadily increased since the 1980s and soared in the 2000s. Given this skyrocketing growth, Chinese energy companies have not always been able to meet the demand for electricity from enterprises promptly. But in the past, they almost always managed to get the problem under control. This year, the situation has become critical, and Chinese companies have come close to the collapse of production due to a lack of electricity. Power outages have swept through the developed regions of eastern China, where most of the population lives and works. Somewhere, it was enough to turn off the elevators in buildings. Somewhere, municipal pumping stations were de-energized, with the result that residents were urged to store water for several months in advance. And some businesses, such as electronics makers for Apple and Tesla, were forced to plug in diesel generators so that work could continue. It is still unclear how long the energy crisis in China will last, due to which the economy suffers colossal losses. But the reason why the country faced such a devastating energy catastrophe are known. Experts identify two main prerequisites for the current collapse. The first is due to the Chinese Communist Party's policy to reduce coal capacity. The fact is that two-thirds of China's electricity is generated by burning coal, which Beijing is trying to limit to solve the problem of climate change. In recent decades, China's industrialization has taken place at an exciting pace. It has helped lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and transform the country into the largest manufacturing facility in the world. It also made China the largest emitter of carbon dioxide, so that this became the key reason for the greenhouse effect that causes climate change. To shake off such an unflattering reputation, the government of the most populous country has set an ambitious goal of becoming a carbon-neutral nation by 2060. To achieve this goal, Xi Jinping called for the abandonment of an economy based on coal and other fossil fuels, and a progressive shift to renewable energy sources. As part of this decree, the Chinese coal sector has been struggling with overcapacity for several years. Thus, the number of coal mines in the country has decreased from 12,000 in 2013 to 4,700 in 2020, and the number of people employed in the coal mining industry has halved since 2013. Over the past 5 years, 163 coal mines have closed in the large coal mining region of Shaanxi in northern China, reducing 146.05 million tons of annual coal production capacity. For a country whose production has so far been heavily tied to coal, this initiative has left its mark. Reduction of overcapacity led to market instability, sharp jumps in coal prices, its shortage in the market, and as a consequence, to a shortage of electricity. It is important to note that Chinese enterprises and households experienced an especially acute shortage of electricity this year. And now it's high time to talk about the second reason for the energy crisis in the Middle Kingdom. If in the first year of the pandemic, Chinese production was forced to slow down due to a global drop in demand, then in the past few months, with the gradual restart of the world economy, the demand for Chinese products has jumped sharply. In dollar terms, exports from China increased 32.2% in June from a year earlier. As a result, export businesses now require much more electricity than during the global COVID blackout. No matter how hard the authorities of the ruling party try to stabilize the situation, the energy crisis does not pass unnoticed for the Chinese economy. In September 2021, Chinese factory activity fell to its lowest level since February 2020, when coronavirus restrictions just started to harm the local economy, according to official figures. According to Goldman Sachs estimates, power shortages have affected up to 44% of the country's industry. The most affected energy-intensive industries include steelmaking, aluminum smelting, cement, and fertilizers production. Global investment banks have already rushed to cut their growth forecasts, The Chinese economy is now expected to grow less than previously predicted this year. Electricity problems in China are partly contributing to higher prices elsewhere, for example in Europe. In particular, we are talking about problems in the supply chains of such key components as microcircuits for computers, smartphones, and other electronics. While the Chinese government is pushing the idea of reducing harmful emissions, coal-fired energy companies are forced to bear losses. Due to the resulting shortage of coal, its purchase price has become prohibitively high. But because the government tightly controls electricity prices, coal-fired power plants refuse to buy coal at an inflated price and cut their power generation or close for maintenance. Many power plants are not operating at full capacity and are skeptical about increasing output, as it means a loss of money for them, said Lin Boqiang, Dean of the China Institute for Energy Policy Research at Xiamen University. Under these conditions, Chinese coal mining companies are now expanding their purchasing channels at all costs to ensure the supply of heat and electricity during the winter. For this, the possibilities of supplying coal from abroad, in particular from Russia, Indonesia, and Mongolia, are being considered. However, foreign coal exporters are unlikely to have time to reorient their supply channels to the Chinese market before winter. Therefore, it is obvious that China will ultimately have to solve the problem of the coal deficit on its own. Experts name several ways to solve this problem. First, the policy for reducing coal capacity should be differentiated. These standards should be set individually for specific regions and even manufacturers. Only this can increase the effectiveness of the government's program to optimize the coal industry. Second, the collapse of the energy industry shows the ineffectiveness of the command and control instruments used in China. Instead, experts recommend turning to market mechanisms, the introduction of quotas for coal production, and the reduction of fixed coal prices. Thirdly, instead of a total reduction of coal production, experts propose to tighten environmental and technological requirements for coal mining, as well as to limit unlicensed capacities and non-core activities at current facilities. Energy problems in China have economic consequences not only for this country itself, but for the whole world. Today, when China is considered the second largest economy in the world, it is simply impossible to exclude it from the global economy. But on the other hand, the rapid development of China has a negative impact on the entire planet, and growing CO2 emissions clearly confirm this. In this regard, the policy of the Chinese Communist Party looks reasonable. Will China be able to find a balance between energy and the environment? Will the country be able to cope with the current problems by administrative methods, or market mechanisms are indispensable? As long as China is reluctant to share its problems with the outside world, we can monitor this situation from a distance. But as the practice of recent years shows, there is hardly a task that the Chinese dragon will not be able to solve. How do you think? How will the energy crisis in China end?